The new photographic styles on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro are fast becoming one of my favourite new features. You can now tweak and change the look of your photos in camera, bringing back the contrast and changing the mood for a different look, so they're ready to share right away. You don't need to go in and edit them afterwards. So if you've just got yourself an iPhone 16 and you're not sure where to start, I'll show you my camera settings and the presets that I've been using for these new photographic styles. What's up guys, Jack here, I'm at Tech Videos. I have just come back from a trip to Greece. It was lovely, thank you for asking. If there's any Greeks watching, then come and say hi down in the comments. And I took a load of photos while I was away, so I'm going to show you some of my favourites using the new photographic styles on the iPhone 16. We'll focus just on stills. If you want to know any tips for shooting video on the iPhone, then let me know and get subscribed, and we can take a look at that in another video. I'm sure by now that you're familiar with the built-in camera app, although I do shoot with some third-party camera apps, which I have talked about here on the channel before. I tend to use those more for like specific purposes. The native camera is actually really powerful. It is fast and easy to use, and you'll need to shoot with it if you want to make use of the new photographic styles on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. But there are some settings and tweaks that I do suggest that you make first to get the most out of this app. So head on over to settings and then camera, scroll down and turn on the grid, and this is going to help you frame your shots. As a general rule, you want to try and have your subject fall on one of these intersecting lines for a more pleasing composition. But there's nothing wrong with a centered shot. There are no rules to your creativity here. And also turn on the level. This is going to help you keep your photos nice and straight and parallel with the horizon. Turn off view outside of frame. I can't remember if this is on by default or not, but when it's on, you'll see this like overlay of the ultra-wide camera around the viewfinder when you're shooting with the main Fusion camera, but I just find it a bit distracting and harder to frame up your shots. I keep portraits in photo mode turned on. This was added last year with the iPhone 15, and this basically captures all of the depth info that the phone needs whenever you take a normal photo, if it detects a face or a pet, or if you tap to focus on something. So you can then go back and apply the portrait mode background blur later on. You no longer have to deliberately shoot in portrait mode. Turn off prioritize faster shooting. This means it will take a little bit longer to take like a bunch of snaps in quick succession, but it means you'll get the best image quality. Keep lens correction turned on, and also turn on the macro control toggle. If you've ever gotten up close to a subject and you notice that it switches to the ultra wide camera for a macro shot and you didn't want it to do that, then turning this on will add this yellow flower toggle, which lets you switch back to the better quality Fusion camera. Unless of course you are actually trying to take a macro shot up close. And if you want the camera app to remember your last setting, scroll up to preserve settings, and in this menu you can turn on the toggle for macro control. And now it will only switch to macro when you press that yellow button. There's a few other settings here that you can preserve. This is just really down to your preference. I like to keep night mode off and I'll turn it on when I need it. And when I do shoot in portrait mode, I like it to go straight into the 2x camera for that longer focal length. But you might want to have a play around with these. If you find yourself constantly changing something because it keeps resetting back to the default, then you can use these toggles to preserve whatever your last setting was whenever you reopen the camera app. Over in formats, there's a few important settings in here. I'm using high efficiency, which saves the photos in the HEIF format for smaller file sizes. And this works great if you're working in the Apple ecosystem across a Mac or an iPad, but Windows and some like specific photo editors don't play well with HEIF, so you might want to switch over to most compatible, which uses old trusty JPEG if you do run into any issues. Otherwise, you'll have to convert your HEIF images into JPEG if you do want to edit them later. By default, the Fusion camera captures 24 megapixels. You'll need to turn on ProRAW if you want to use the full 48 megapixels. ProRAW Max will give you a raw image with lots of image data and scope for editing your photos later if that is your preference. But as we're focusing on the new photographic styles, of the two options here, only HEIF Max works with the new styles. These HEIF files are way smaller than RAW, but whichever option you go with, they both disable live photos, which I do like having turned on. So yeah, there are some trade-offs. Generally, I only really shoot with HEIF Max or ProRAW Max for very specific shots. And pro tip, you can quickly switch between these by holding the Max toggle in the camera app. You don't need to keep coming back to this menu. Apple also added the new JPEG XL format for the 16 Pros. From top to bottom, we have the largest down to the smallest file sizes, with JPEG lossless being the most compatible, and JPEG XL having smaller files, but it's still not supported everywhere. I've been using JPEG XL lossless, as these are about half the size as JPEG, so I'm not filling up my storage or iCloud, and I've not run into any issues yet, but I am very much in the Apple ecosystem, which does support JPEG XL. Then we have this section for the camera control. This is a new button on the side of all of the iPhone 16s, and after a month of using it, I still stand by what I said in my initial review. This thing can be kind of fiddly. Now, I love using it to jump straight into the camera app, and using it as a shutter button to take a photo is great too, especially if I'm just, trying to grab a quick shot one-handed. But the gestures have been a little bit of a miss for me. A double light press brings up a menu with settings that you can swipe between, but I just find the sensitivity to be a little bit off, especially for things like zoom and exposure control. I often find myself swiping right past where I want to be. So I've turned off the clean preview toggle, as it's often just faster to touch the screen. Mostly I've been using it to switch between the cameras or to switch between photographic styles. So what are those? These were first introduced with the iPhone 13, but they've now had a complete overhaul with the 16. There are now 14 different styles to choose from. The first 5 are tuned for skin undertones, including cool rose, neutral, rose gold, gold, and amber. And these changes all begin deep within the image pipeline. And these are all fairly subtle. Gold and amber are my favorites here, and I'll show you how I like to use them and how you can adjust them in just a moment. The other 9 styles are what Apple calls moods, and these offer more of like a filtered look if you want something more dramatic or stylized. And don't worry if you think that some of them look a little bit too much. I thought that quiet was a bit extreme at first, but after playing around with the preset, it has fast become one of my favorites. All of the photographic styles only work with photos that are taken with an iPhone 16 in the native camera. So once you've shot a few photos in the standard style, you can then start to experiment and find a style that you like. You can choose 4 photos and swipe between the different undertone looks to see how they adjust different parts of the image. Cool rose accentuates cool pinkish undertones. Neutral neutralizes warm undertones, and rose gold, gold, and amber emphasize those specific tones, with a slider underneath to tweak the strength of each palette, enhancing the cooler or the warmer tones depending on the style. Then you can use the control pad to swipe up and down to adjust the tone, more on that in a minute, and left and right for the color saturation, even for the standard style as well, and you can set your favorite as your new default. One of the biggest complaints in smartphone photography in recent years has been the increasing overprocessing of the images. They tend to just brighten everything in the scene, leaving no areas for shadows, leaving everything just looking kind of flat and lifeless. Dragging that tone slider down lets you bring more of that contrast back into the image and dial it in just as you like it. And the best thing is you can adjust and change these afterwards, so you don't have to commit to one for all your photos forever. You'll find that certain styles work better in certain conditions. So let's take a look at some of my presets, and if you like them too, you can steal them or tweak them for a look that you like. Gold and amber are by far my favorites out of the undertones. They are so versatile and great for everyday shooting. They work in pretty much every situation. I love the warm hues that they add to a scene. They work really well for food pics too. Like, how good do these waffles and pancakes look? You can almost taste them. For both, I've kept the palette at 100 as the look is kind of subtle, but I have taken the tone down to -50 to bring back some of the contrast. And I've boosted the color to +20. And if you dial these in from the camera app, it will remember the preset next time you shoot with it. They're perfect for sunset shooting as well. They really complement the warmer tones, bringing out the golden hues in the sand in this photo, or the earthy reds and oranges in these rocks. I'm using the exact same presets for rose gold, although I haven't really used this one as much as it just doesn't really work with my skin tone. Cool and neutral give you cooler images, which again, I've just not used as much. But I think that as we head into winter, if we get some like frosty or snowy days, I think these are going to work really well here. With the same presets as before, but this time using -10 for color. For all of the undertone styles, I found that I don't really need to change these presets at all for different scenes. I use -50 in the tone to bring some of the depth back and make the image less flat, with a slight boost to color in the gold and amber styles to give them just a bit more saturation. With the mood styles, my favorites here are vibrant, dramatic, quiet, and stark black and white. Vibrant gives a nice boost to all of the colours in a shot, and I think this one works really well for landscapes or shots of nature to really bring out the colours. It also shifts the green tones more into the blues if you want that like aqueous look to the water, and it enhances the blues in the sky. Here I'm using tone -40, colour +50 and palette 60. It's another great one for food shots and also for using just after sunset to really bring out the oranges and the reds in the sky. I really like this silhouetted shot. Dramatic also gives the colours a nice boost. I like using this one to give more of like a pop to an image. Here it brings out the contrast in the waves and the water. Notice how it intelligently preserves the white colour of my trousers in the clouds, only changing the white foam colour in the sea. And it just really makes the shot more dramatic compared to the original. And I love this shot of the waves crashing against the lighthouse rocks. Quiet is, I'm going to say, underrated. I actually think that this is one of the best. Now, the default preset is kind of strong, and I think that it might put people off at first before they actually try it out, myself included. But these are some of my shots of it. I love the faded look with the warm undertones. It kind of gives the photos a bit of like a retro vibe, bringing out the yellower tones with a bit more of a muted film aesthetic. It is easily one of my favorites if you like that look. And it works really well in shots like this with a mix of strong light and shadows. And to get this, I'm using tone -40, colour +30 and palette 16. And my last one is stark black and white. I love this deep contrasty look, but this is one that I don't really have like a defined preset, as it really depends on the lighting and the colours in the shot. Currently I have it set to tone -50, colour 0 and palette 50. But I like to play around with the control pad afterwards to really find the right look, maybe bringing out more detail in the clouds and the sky. This just looks really striking in black and white, especially with the people lined up along the wall. And for the standard style, the only thing that I've changed here is set the tone to -50 to help reduce some of the overly HDR-ness and bring back some of the shadows. And remember, you can use the preserve style toggle to always remember the last one that you shot with. Those are my favorite styles. Go and have a play around and see what you can come up with. If you have an iPad or a Mac, you can also edit your iPhone 16 photos on those devices too. In fact, if you have a Mac, you can just type in the exact numbers, which is so much easier. You do have to fight with that control pad a bit, so I'm really hoping that they bring this across to the iPhone. And another tip, you can copy and paste your style to batch edit a bunch of photos all at once. That is a big time saver. Let me know your favorite styles down in the comments. I generally go for quite a subtle look with the gold or the amber, occasionally going for something more vibrant or dramatic. It just depends on the shot. And with these presets, they give you a quick and easy photo that you can share right away without having to do any big edits. So these revamp styles are definitely one of my favorite new features as someone who takes a lot of photos when I travel. I'd love it though if we could create our own completely custom style and even choose the palette colors for even more control. If you don't have an iPhone 16 or you're just looking for a way to edit your photos yourself, I have a video about my favorite photo editing app, Photomator, which I'll link to down below. And it works across iPhone, iPad and Mac. Leave a like if the video helped you out. Do consider subscribing and joining the channel if you want to see more tech videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.